This story does not begin with a moment of violence on a dark highway in Florida.
Nor does it begin with the discovery of bodies scattered along lonely roadsides. It begins much earlier, in a fractured childhood shaped by abandonment.
And a series of experiences that would slowly carve deep emotional scars into a young girl who never truly had a chance to feel safe. And to understand the chilling weight of what would eventually unfold, you have to enter that early world.
A place where the foundation of identity is formed not through love and security, but through fear, confusion, and survival.
Because she was born in 1956 in a small Midwestern town, into circumstances that were already beginning to unravel before she could even speak. Her father, later revealed to be a convicted child molester, never present in her life, and ultimately dying by suicide in prison.
While her mother abandoned Aileen and her brother at a young age, leaving them in the care of grandparents whose household, far from being a refuge,
became another environment marked by dysfunction, alleged abuse, and emotional neglect. And as the years passed, the boundaries between childhood innocence and harsh reality blurred rapidly, with accounts suggesting that by the time she was just 11 years old,
Aileen was already trading sexual acts for small necessities like food, cigarettes, or spare change, a disturbing glimpse into a life where survival instincts
replaced the normal rhythms of growing up. And by 14, she was pregnant, giving birth to a child who would be placed for adoption almost immediately. Another profound loss that compounded her sense of abandonment. And not long after, she was expelled from her grandparents' home.
Forced into a life of homelessness where she slept in the woods, scavenged for resources, and relied on whatever means she could to endure another day.
And this pattern of instability, marginalization, and survival through risky choices would follow her into shaping not only her circumstances, but also the way she perceived the world around her. Because when trust is repeatedly broken, it becomes something fragile, something easily replaced by suspicion, fear, and a readiness to defend oneself at all costs. And as she grew older,
her life became a series of transient moments. Brief stays in different towns, minor brushes with the law, relationships that flickered in,
and an increasing reliance on hitchhiking and sex work along highways, particularly in Florida, where the long stretches of road became both her means of survival and, eventually, the stage for something far darker.
Because it was there, amid the hum of passing cars and the isolation of night, that Aileen's life would take a turn that would cement her place in criminal history.
But even before the murders began, there were signs of a person struggling under immense psychological strain. Someone whose past had left them with unresolved trauma and a worldview shaped by danger and distrust.
A hotel maid, and for a time this relationship seemed to offer a glimpse of something different, something almost resembling stability or companionship.
As the two women formed a close bond, living together and sharing what little they had. And for Aileen, this connection may have represented for one of the few instances in her life where she felt understood or accepted. But even this fragile sense of normalcy existed under the constant pressure of financial hardship, because survival still demanded money, and money was not something easily obtained, especially for someone with Aileen's history.
Limited opportunities and ongoing struggles, and as the late 1980s approached, that pressure seemed to intensify, building toward a breaking point
that would manifest in a series of violent acts that shocked the nation. Because between 1989 and 1990, 7 men were found dead along Florida highways, each of them shot at close range, their bodies discovered in remote areas that suggested not only isolation but also a calculated effort to avoid immediate detection.
And at first, these killings appeared disconnected. Random acts of violence scattered across different locations.
Patterns started to emerge. Similarities in the victims, many of whom were middle-aged men traveling alone, and connections to encounters with a woman hitchhiking or offering companionship along the roadside. And slowly, the realization dawned
that these were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger, more disturbing pattern, one that pointed to a single perpetrator operating within a specific environment,
where anonymity and vulnerability intersected. And as the investigation intensified, leading to her arrest in January 1991, a moment that would mark the beginning of a legal and psychological unraveling that captivated the public. Because when she confessed to the killings, her explanation introduced a narrative that complicated the straightforward label of serial killer.
As a South Asian woman claimed that each act of violence was committed in self-defense, insisting that the men had either attempted to rape her or had already assaulted her.
And that she had acted out of fear and desperation. A claim that would ignite intense debate, raising questions about the realities faced by women in vulnerable positions and the extent to which past trauma can influence present actions. But prosecutors presented a starkly different narrative, arguing that Aileen had deliberately targeted these men for financial gain.
Using her position as a hitchhiker and sex worker to gain their trust before robbing and murdering them. And the evidence brought forward, ballistic matches, witness accounts,
and her own recorded statements proved compelling enough to secure convictions, leading to multiple death sentences that would ultimately define her legacy. Within the legal system, the proceedings eventually came to an end. But even then, the story refused to settle into a simple narrative, because her behavior on death row continued to draw attention, with interviews revealing a complex and often contradictory personality.
At times expressing remorse, and at others displaying anger, paranoia, and accusations of mistreatment
designed to harm her. Statements that blurred the line between possible psychological distress and genuine grievances, and these moments added layers to the public's perception of her, transforming her from a distant figure of fear into a subject of intense fascination. And, in some cases, reluctant empathy, because people began to question not only what she had done, but also what had been done to her.
And whether those experiences had played a role in shaping the person she became, and her relationship with Tyria Moore became a critical element in this unfolding drama.
As Moore eventually cooperated with authorities, participating in recorded phone calls that helped elicit further confessions from Aileen, a development that likely carried a deep emotional impact, given the significance of that relationship in Aileen's life. And as the years passed and her execution date approached, Aileen made the controversial decision to forego further appeals,
effectively accelerating her path toward death, stating that she was ready for it and that she wanted the process to end, a decision that sparked renewed debate
about her mental state and whether she was truly able to make such a decision with full understanding. And on October 9, 2002, she was executed by lethal injection in Florida State Prison, bringing a formal end to her life, but not to the questions
and controversies surrounding it, because even her final words carried an unsettling tone, reflecting a mixture of resignation, defiance,
leaving observers with a sense that the story had ended without clear answers. And in the years since, its impact has continued to linger,
continuing to capture public attention through documentaries, books, and films, including the widely known movie Monster, where Charlize Theron's portrayal brought a human dimension to a figure often reduced to headlines, prompting audiences to reflect on difficult questions about the intersections of trauma, gender, and violence, and challenging the tendency to view such cases in purely black and white terms.
Because Aileen's story exists in a gray area where victimhood and culpability overlap.
And as her story continues to be told and retold, it serves as a haunting reminder of the complexities underlying acts of violence, the ways in which past experiences can echo into the present, and the difficult balance between understanding and accountability, leaving behind a narrative that lingers not just for its shocking events, but for the unsettling realization that the path leading to those events
is often as important and as disturbing as the crimes themselves. And as you follow that path, from a troubled childhood to
the tension builds not only from what happened, but from the lingering uncertainty about why. A question that resists easy answers and continues to echo long after the final chapter of her life has been written, casting a shadow that stretches far beyond the boundaries of a single case and into the broader conversation about human nature, justice, and the fragile line between survival and destruction.